It seems like we've heard from literally everybody on the Mark Andrews trade situation, except for Mark Andrews himself. Well, that changed after an article dropped where Andrews shared his thoughts on the situation and more. We talk about that, a Lamar Jackson hater changing his tune and defending Lamar, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and as an audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You're not missing out if you decide to watch or listen to our shows. We have a lot of draft content coming your way for the rest of the week. Obviously, we're one day away from the NFL draft, and I'm really excited about it. We're going to have coverage Thursday, Friday, Saturday into Sunday, and obviously following this rookie class as their journey gets started. So be prepared for live streams after each day of the draft. We will also have bonus episodes over the weekend as well, breaking everything down, keeping up with the latest happenings, and talking about who the Ravens did pick and who they could pick on the subsequent days. So appreciate everybody keeping it locked in here on Locked On Ravens with me. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Jam-packed episode today. In the second and third segments, you're going to want to stay tuned. We have Mike Sando, senior NFL writer for The Athletic, joining. He's highly respected. He's been around the game for a really long time, and he knows his stuff. So we're going to be talking Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson, Ravens draft, Ravens expectations. We have so much we're going to dive into with Mike. So again, second and third segments, that's Mike Sando time. But in the first segment, Mark Andrews broke his silence on the trade speculation that's been really circulating around him and about him. So we're going to be talking about that, as well as a Lamar Jackson hater breaking a little bit, going off script a little bit, I guess, for someone who has had the takes that he's had about Lamar and actually defending Lamar against some of the crazy quarterback comparisons that he has had to some of the rookies in this draft. So plenty to dive into today. Let's get into it. This comes by way of ESPN, Jamison Hensley. The article dropped yesterday morning, and Mark Andrews was promoting Dexcom U, and he was asked questions about the Buffalo game and his role in that, especially the 2-point conversion. We'll get to that in a couple minutes, but I first want to start off with the trade conversation, because I know that's the topic everybody's talking about. He said, quote, "I know the Ravens and my relationship is incredibly strong, and I trust in Eric DeCosta and everybody there over at the Ravens. There's nothing on my end really to share. For me, it's just been working hard this offseason, trying to get in the best shape of my life, trying to have the best season of my life coming up and winning a Super Bowl." And he also mentioned about Eric DeCosta's comments. We talked about that. The pre-draft press conference for Eric DeCosta, he was very non-committal about the future of Andrews in Baltimore, which raised even more speculation about whether Andrews would be on the roster even just after the draft. And Mark Andrews said, quote, "At the end of the day, I think DeCosta said it perfectly. He's in the business of keeping great players, and it's a business at the end of the day. You can't be surprised by anything, but I'm a Raven." So it seems like Andrews feels somewhat confident that he's going to remain with the team. Obviously, he mentions that you can't be surprised by anything, so it's not, I'm sure, 100% that he's going to stay. There are certainly scenarios, and we've gone over that here on this show, where Andrews does get dealt. That perfect offer comes along. Maybe a team gets desperate and offers Baltimore what they have been asking for Mark Andrews. But obviously he's seen it, he's heard it, he's read it, he understands it, and he apparently agrees that, like, hey, you know what? He's in the business of keeping great players. He obviously believes he's a great player because he is one. I know that the Buffalo game has left a sour taste in people's mouths, but I do want to be clear, and I've said it before, Andrew's still a top 5 tight end in my opinion. So we'll see what happens. And again, there are these checkpoints and these milestones, I feel like, in this Andrews trade saga. I mean, that really feels like what it is, where that roster bonus was one of them. That gets guaranteed. It cuts the cap hit or the cap savings of Andrews from, if he were to be released before that, it would have been $11 million in cap savings. Now it's only $7 million. because that happened, trade likelihood goes down. I think after the draft, trade likelihood goes way down. Not that it's impossible, but I mean, in reality, you probably want to trade Mark for a pick, and that pick should probably be in this year's draft if you want to have the immediate impact of it, because if you let him walk in the offseason after next year, you're going to get a comp pick for him anyway. So it doesn't really make a ton of sense to me, at least, to trade him after the draft. Kind of feels like this is the soft deadline coming up to move him. And honestly, day 2 is probably that deadline to move him, because if you've been listening to me on the show, I've said that I personally would not trade Mark Andrews for anything less than a day 2 selection. So Andrews was talking about his future and the fact that he's working, he's getting ready for the year. It's great news for Baltimore. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less than that. But to me, it feels like if I had to make a prediction right now, I think Andrews will stay. I think Andrews will stay. He will walk in the offseason. Isaiah Likely will sign a new deal. They will choose Likely over Andrews. That is my prediction for it. Again, anything can happen. Mark Andrews made that clear. Can't be surprised. But we kind of saw this dance, honestly, if you go back with Ronnie Stanley as well, where at the beginning of the offseason, the Ravens were pretty non-committal about Ronnie Stanley's future. And then at the, was it the owners' meetings? I can't remember what it was, but it was one, John Harbaugh at a press conference, or maybe it was Eric DeCosta, one of them. And they essentially, maybe it was both of them, regardless, but one of them said, oh, hey, Ronnie, it was definitely Harbaugh. I'm definitely remembering that right. Harbaugh was like, yeah, really excited about Ronnie. I expect them to be back like this. And everyone's like, whoa, that was a big shift. And it feels like this was the opposite with Andrews, where, we had kind of heard some committal / non-committal things. And now it's like, oh, okay, this suddenly got really interesting. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But Andrews also talked about the infamous night in Buffalo, the tragedies that unfolded on the field that night that he was involved in, mainly the 2-point conversion that would have obviously it was the play of the game, and Andrews dropped it. And for Baltimore, that was their year. Their season ended on a Mark Andrews drop. He talked about how he figured out when that ended up going on that his gloves were soaked. He collided with Isaiah Likely. He fell face first into the turf on the touchdown catch from Lamar to Isaiah Likely. And so he said that when he went to the huddle for the 2-point conversion, you noticed his gloves were soaked. And he said, quote, I'm thinking, do I take it off? Do I not? It was so fast and so quick that it just happened. And at the end of the day, I still should have caught the ball. I still should have made that play. And he said, quote, that sportsman, things happen. I know the type of player that I am and what I can do. And it is what it is. It was tough. It wasn't the best game. And I'm looking forward to redemption. Man, his comments about the gloves caused waves of controversy within the Ravens fan base. I certainly saw that. And, it wasn't the best thing to hear. Like, I appreciate Mark being transparent about it, but it's one of the things you're just kind of like, man, makes it that much more painful of like, if he had just kind of tossed those gloves to the side, could it have been different? Like if he had made a different decision there, would it have been different? I mean, obviously, look, he still has to make the play, right? There's no excuses here, and Andrews made that clear. He said he still should have caught the ball, still should have made the play. I don't care about soaked gloves, dry gloves, no gloves, whatever gloves. That's a play Mark Andrews 100 times out of 100 should make. The fact of the matter is he didn't. It cost the Ravens a big moment. It cost the Ravens their season. And that's the reality of it. So, I mean, I guess I appreciate Mark being transparent about it, but, it just kind of brings back the pain and the memories of that day, and you just want to move on. And, I don't want this play or the sequence in Buffalo to taint Mark's career, because he's had a phenomenal career. He's been an upstanding Raven and someone who will go down as one of the best at the position in Ravens history. He's still one of the best at the position today, just in terms of the league. And I mean, I still think he's a top 5 tight end, but you want to move on from it. My prediction again is I expect Andrews to remain in Baltimore, and we'll see how that unfolds. So, Andrews speaking pretty monumental, because, he hasn't really talked much at all. He released that statement. These were his first comments, really, I believe. Maybe I'm mistaken on that, but I believe these are his first comments, like, to the media not just in a statement since the whole ordeal happened. So Baltimore has a decision to make. We will see what their decision is. But also, a Lamar Jackson hater changed the tune up a little bit. Bucky Brooks, if you know that name, is because he's the one who suggested the Ravens graduate from Lamar Jackson and move on to Justin Fields a couple years ago, have Lamar sign a big deal and, reset the clock with Justin Fields. Obviously a terrible take all the way around. He's had different hits and articles about Lamar having kryptonite teams, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh. It's not that Bucky hasn't said anything positive about Lamar, but again, Bucky Brooks is most known for that graduate take, Lamar to Justin Fields. If you have been keeping up with the draft process, Jalen Milroe is getting a lot of press and a lot of comparisons. And the buzz has honestly been kind of crazy where he's being called, the best running quarterback teams have ever evaluated. And AFC offensive or just coordinator in general said that he has Cam Newton's power and Lamar's speed, like a lot of crazy stuff about Jalen Milroe. Milroe has said that he does believe he's faster than Lamar Jackson. Andrew Berry has said that he's faster than Lamar Jackson. Just whole 9 yards, this Jalen Milroe over Lamar Jackson type thing. Well, Bucky Brooks took to social media and said, quote, NFL coaches and scouts are funny. Lamar Jackson ran for 4K yards and 50 touchdowns in 3 years at Louisville. He had back-to-back seasons of 1,500 plus rushing yards. At some point, we'll have to check the facts when making the Milroe comparison. So again, it's just like, I don't know why we're putting Lamar Jackson in these conversations. I just don't know. And it's nothing against Milroe. Honestly, these comparisons are kind of unfair to Milroe because now he has to live up to those. These were placed on him by these teams and executives. And I guess he himself, feeding into it a little bit on Kay Adams' show, saying that he is faster than Lamar. That'll have something to do with it. But now that's going to be the expectation from Milroe is, he is faster than Lamar. And, we expect greatness. Lamar makes these crazy plays. Only Lamar Jackson can do that, by the way. Jalen Milroe cannot do that. Jalen Milroe is a fantastic athlete. It's nothing against Milroe. I actually like Jalen Milroe. I think he has a lot of potential. But he is not Lamar Jackson. And he's not Lamar Jackson right now. He will never be Lamar Jackson. And that's not me trying to hate on him and be like, he's not going to be good. That's not what I'm saying. He has potential to be good. Potential to be really good. But there's only one Lamar Jackson. We've established this. Bucky Brooks even getting on that conversation. So a lot of different things as the draft approaches. It's draft season. Content coming to everybody at rapid speeds. Coming up for the second part of the show, we'll get into our conversation with Mike Sando of The Athletic. We have a lot to talk about there. Stay tuned, plenty to talk about on the show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy. Nuggets and Clippers tied up at 1 apiece. They're heading back to LA for game 3. And right now, the Clippers are favored in that game by 5 points over on FanDuel. So if you like the Nuggets as the road underdogs, you can go and place that bet over on FanDuel. Or if you think the Clippers will make it 2 straight and pick up that win at home, you can bet on the Clippers over there as well. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Again, don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you talking Ravens football. 1 day away from the draft. I'm super pumped. We have so much content coming your way, as I mentioned at the top of the show. Live shows after Thursday's day 1, and that'll be a late one. Then we'll have another late one after day 2. We'll recap rounds 2 and 3. Then in the afternoon on Saturday, we'll recap everything. We'll recap the whole draft, what happened on day 3. We'll have bonus episodes on Saturday and Sunday. So be sure to like and subscribe in video form, follow along in audio form for all the Ravens draft coverage and daily coverage you need here on Locked On Ravens. Now, Mike Sando of The Athletic is going to join us here to talk about Baltimore Ravens football, everything pertaining to Baltimore. We'll get into that in this segment and the next one, so let's talk with Mike now. Joining me now, it is Mike Sando, senior NFL writer at The Athletic. Mike, always appreciate you taking the time. Welcome back into the show. As we were talking before we ended up hitting record. The draft always sneaks up on you, it feels like, where you're doing all this speculating, you're doing all these mock drafts, and then all of a sudden the week finally gets here, and you're like, man, where'd all the time go?
I know. I love the draft itself, more than the build up to it. Really, I think it's hard to. Uh, it's just the draft's so hard to predict and project because there's just so many variables, and you can't even mock a top 10, let alone the top round. So when it finally gets here, we get answers. I love that.
You have, I think, one pick penciled in, Cam Ward to Tennessee. Other than that, you really don't know what happens. There's some speculation about what happens with Cleveland at 2. When you look at this draft class as a whole, what do you kind of see? I feel like the consensus has been there are a couple of stars at the top, but then it kind of falls off after that. But you have a lot of guys all 3 days that maybe can come in and contribute right away.
Definitely. I think the quarterback class is always interesting every year. I mean, last year we had 6 in the first 12 picks, and I think nobody thinks that's going to happen again. There's a lot of speculation that Shedeur Sanders could fall way out of the top 10, which happens at quarterback. We've seen it even with really good quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, because not everyone's going to pick one. There's many teams that are just, they're not going to take somebody who's a non-generational type player at that position because they already have somebody who's at least as good in their mind. So I think that's a interesting component of it, just how far Shedeur Sanders falls. Will there be a different quarterback that goes second? I think the Louisville quarterback Shuck, is interesting. I don't know how high he could go, but I remember talking to people coming out of the combine that, hey, he's somebody who's going to go a lot higher than people think. And so when I did my mocking of the top 10 picks coming out of the combine, I threw him in there, not as a pick, but just as a name to keep in mind, because I think there is enough uncertainty around the quarterbacks.
When you look at the position, particularly in the AFC North, obviously Baltimore and Cincinnati, they have their guys, but you mentioned Cleveland and obviously Pittsburgh as well. Mm-hmm. When you look at the AFC North as a whole right now, Mike, it feels like the Baltimore at least should be considered the favorite. They are by most at this point, but that quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, they're a stable organization, but we don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and, whether it'll be Sanders at 21, will Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe slip into there? Cleveland, if they take Travis Hunter, will Moreau or Shuck or anybody be the pick at 33? Cincinnati has their own issues on defense. What's your read on the division right now? Because Baltimore has needs of their own. They're not perfect, but it feels like right now they are the favorite to win it.
Oh yeah, I think they're the team that you can bank on the most. Just based on the whole thing of the organization, the coaching, the way that the front office and the coach and the quarterback seem to all be on the same page and all seem to be, near the top of if you were going to rank, front offices, Baltimore would easily be in the top 5. Rank quarterbacks, Lamar's easily in the top 5. Rank head coaches, you could easily put John Harbaugh in the top 5. I don't think you can say that for any other team in the division. We've seen that, the ceiling can be high for Cincinnati because Joe Burrow's really good, but I don't think they check all those other boxes, and they've been more down than up lately with still big questions on defense for them. Hey, everyone applauded. They signed their wide receivers to a lot of money, but they're the same guys that were on the team last year. They just cost more now. That doesn't necessarily upgrade you, right? Hey, you say, good job, you signed your guys, but they're not better for doing that. And in fact, they may be worse in the short term if they're not able to plug some other holes because of the resources that they're spending there. So I think Pittsburgh's the most interesting just because they've been so casual at the quarterback position really for years. I mean, they waited for Pickett to fall to them. Usually when you have a quarterback you really like, sometimes you move up and get him, make sure you get him. They just kind of sat there, got him last off season. Justin Fields, maybe we'll take a flyer on him. Russell Wilson, we'll take a flyer on him. This year, we'll see. Maybe they get Aaron Rodgers. Maybe they don't. They don't seem to be pushing it too hard. I mean, does everybody have a lifetime contract there? Right? You don't see the urgency. You don't feel the urgency that you feel from other teams when they don't have that position squared away. No one buys that they're comfortable with Mason Rudolph. I mean, give me a break. So maybe they play in poker. Maybe they're going to get Rodgers and it's all going to live happily ever after. But it seems a little casual to me.
Yeah, no team has ever won the AFC North 3 times in a row. Baltimore is going to go for that this season. They've won it the past 2 years, so we'll see how that unfolds. They might do it with Mark Andrews. They might do it without Mark Andrews. We don't know yet, Mike. We'd obviously know the Buffalo game was pretty big disaster for Mark and doesn't show who he is as a player. I know the playoff success hasn't been quite up to the level of his regular season success, but I still think that he's a player that's valuable. He's a top 5 tight end. And I think that Buffalo game, it's what have you done for me lately league. And that's the lasting memory that people have. What's your take on Mark Andrews? Because he did respond to the trade criticism and all the speculation that's floating around about him right now.
I thought he was, way better over the second half of the last season than I expected. I thought he was coming off the injury, a little bit older. I'd written him off a little bit, so I give him a lot of credit. I know it was a tough last game, and nobody wanted to see that, but I don't feel like that means he has to leave the roster or anything. I think the interesting thing will be to see, how much they want to pay him. I think his base salary is about $7 million, not prohibitive, but where does everybody see his value going into it's the last year of his deal, right? I think he's going into the last year of his contract. So the easiest thing would be just to have him play it out as somebody who's, got a lot of equity in the organization, somebody who played well second half of the season, looked like they were on the upswing again, and somebody who could really help the team. So I you're not surprised if they move him. You're not really surprised if anything happens, but do you feel great urgency to do something? I don't know that I do.
Yeah, and again, I don't think you just trade him to trade him, right? I think that would be a mistake because he's still such a good player. All 3 tight ends on the Ravens roster do not have contracts beyond the season. So they're going to have to make decisions here and there on what Baltimore's tight end room looks like. It feels like Isaiah likely is going to be the guy that ends up being the future of the position, and that's okay. Maybe unlikely that they can pay both, and they'd be in a fine situation if they were to trade him because likely can step in. But if you're not getting anything even more than a third, he probably walks for a comp pick anyway. And Mike, we know the Ravens are the king of the comp pick formula. So if you're getting a 4th anyway next season, it's probably worth it to keep him on the roster anyway.
Yeah, I think they've got 4th and 5th round comps this year, if I remember looking at their draft. So yeah.
All the comp picks for Baltimore, 4 again this season, which that's what Eric DeCosta and this Ravens organization does. They have 11 picks, which Eric DeCosta even outright admitted that 11 picks might be hard to make this roster. They didn't really lose a ton in the offseason. They added DeAndre Hopkins, and Mike, you put out an article earlier this month kind of polling AFC executives about their thoughts on the offseason and executives across the league. And one of the comments that I think sparked the eyes and ears of Ravens fans was about DeAndre Hopkins and Ronnie Stanley, where one executive, according to your article here, said that I like the fact that they kept their guy in Stanley, but he had some injuries, still a good player. But for DeAndre Hopkins, the quote was, D-Hop, that doesn't do anything for me. He's just a name at this point. So I'm curious your thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I think that's fair, that he's obviously a great name. I mean, he's put together a string of really good seasons, but that was from 2017 to 2020. 2021 on, he's got 1,000-yard season. Last year, he's played for 2 teams and had 600 yards. So it looks like he's really fallen off. And if he wasn't, I thought when the Chiefs got him, I bet on him a little bit and kind of thought, I thought he might lead their team in touchdown receptions, kind of become a guy for them. He ended up, I think, having 4 for Kansas City in the regular season, but wasn't an impact player. So the odds of him suddenly becoming an impact player on an offense where, it really goes through, Derrick Henry and Lamar to a degree that is not just passing the ball, would be a little surprising.
I think the big part of DeAndre, and definitely the fact that we all know, Mike, he's not Texans DeAndre Hopkins. He's not going to walk through that door and all of a sudden become all pro, top 5 wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins again. I am curious to hear your thoughts though on maybe will a role change help him? He really hasn't been healthy in 3 of the last 4 seasons. He has had that 1 year, and he was actually decent when he was healthy, but he had that injury at the start of training camp or in training camp with Tennessee last season that I think set him back for the rest of the year. Do you think him playing behind Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman as a number 3 receiver, maybe limiting the amount of time he gets on the field, but using him in spot areas will help him, again, not become a 1,000-yard receiver, but at least in a role like that, give him an opportunity to make more impact plays?
It could give him an opportunity to play more of the games. I mean, he hasn't played more than 10 games in a season since 2020, which was his first year out of Houston when he was still very good with Arizona. So, I think if your role is diminished like that, it's not because they think it's going to make you more dynamic. It's because you're not one of the best receivers on the team, and your numbers and production's probably going to be reflect that accordingly, right? So it may be the best role for him at this point. And maybe that's the way that you can get more games out of him. But I don't think that's the way you get top production out of anybody.
Coming up in the final part of the show, we will round out our conversation with Mike, continue talking Ravens football, so stay tuned. Plenty coming your way. First, the show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25, and Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Plus, it can be a great option for you to start playing Xbox, and it can also improve your gaming experience. Head to Amazon.com/FireTV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, back here on this Wednesday edition of the show, talking Ravens football. Draft one day away with plenty of draft coverage coming your way. Let's continue our conversation with Mike Sando, round that out as we continue talking Lamar Jackson, Ravens draft, and Ravens football. For Baltimore, they're a team that, at least for what they have with everybody you mentioned, right? The offense isn't going to run through DeAndre Hopkins. It's going to run through Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are going to get involved, Zay Flowers as well. But that Ronnie Stanley move, I think a lot of people here in Baltimore are pretty thrilled with that, especially because he was able to put together a healthy season and he played really well with it. And that 3-year deal essentially gave the Ravens some positional versatility in this draft where they don't have a need where you have to get it in the first round or it's a bust. We know the Ravens are a BPA team. When you look at Baltimore's needs right now, Mike, a lot of them seemingly are on the defensive side of the ball. How do you see Baltimore's position as we enter the draft tomorrow?
They're picking so late in the draft that you can't really say what they're going to do. I think I perceive them of being, hey, kind of a meat and potatoes team that takes care of their lines. But when you look at what they've done in the draft, a lot of them picking back there. There's wide receivers, tight end, linebacker, safety, some non-premium positions in there, right? Which is what happens when you're at the end of the round. You can make that choice of, do you want a higher ranked guy at a non-premium position? Hayden Hurst, right? Kyle Hamilton, which maybe that is a premium position the way he plays, but you get what I'm saying. Or do you try to take the 5th wide receiver like Rashod Bateman was in 2021? They struck gold with the 5th quarterback in Lamar Jackson. Good for them. But I think it lends itself to some unpredictability. Maybe there's somebody who falls and fits one of their needs. Maybe there's a corner. I think when they took Nate Wiggins, I believe he was the 2nd corner. They got the 2nd corner in the draft at number 30. Sometimes you can do that. Is there an offensive lineman? I think that would fit well for them too. So I think we don't know right now who's going to be available and what positions there's going to be necessarily a run on, but that would certainly make sense to help at corner, maybe help at offensive line.
And definitely, I think immediate impact players are the name of the game for Baltimore. We saw them get incredible production out of Nate Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten last season, and it's pretty rare to have back-to-back picks like that help you during the season, the rookie year. Some teams don't even hit on those picks at all, and they're just busts, and you don't get anything from them ever. But I think the expectation in Baltimore, Mike, it is Super Bowl or bust. And I know that mentality for a lot of teams, like Kansas City has been that top team. They've been the team that every team in the AFC in NFL, honestly, they've had that target on their back is, hey, we need to beat that team. We saw what happened to them in the Super Bowl against Philadelphia. I'm not writing them off and saying they're awful now. I think that'd be foolish for anybody to do. Yeah. But when you look at the AFC, I think the top 3 teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, in no particular order there. How do you see the top of the AFC right now?
Yeah, I see it being a little bit closer next year because I don't think there's any way Kansas City wins all those close games. Remember, they couldn't lose a game last year, even when they should have. They're blocking field goals, all kinds of stuff to win these games they never should have won. So I think there's a decent chance next year that one of those other teams has the home field. Maybe it's Buffalo, it could be Baltimore, but I think you're right. Those are the teams. I think it's going to be closer, more bunched. I don't think Kansas City is necessarily going anywhere, but we have to be realistic about what they were last season. And they really won more games than they should have and got a little bit exposed in the Super Bowl. So I think you feel pretty good if you're Baltimore or Buffalo about, your chances to finally break through. And maybe it's with a home game, maybe it's with home field through the playoffs.
I think the big part, and you talk about early season losses, Baltimore started 0-2. And if they had won just one of those games, whether Isaiah Likely's toe is in bounds or they beat the Raiders at home, which absolutely should have been a win, you're talking about that divisional round game being in Baltimore instead of in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And maybe that changes everything. So it comes down to inches like that and plays like that, where September losses might not matter in September, but they certainly do matter in December and January when you're fighting for playoff seeding.
Yeah, last year they were breaking in new defensive coordinator, and it took a while to get the defense going. I think they were really having to overcome defense and special teams. So I think that will be like, if I'm a Ravens fan or if I'm working for the Ravens, I would be saying, can we be a little bit more of a consistent team start to finish, right? We don't necessarily have, we're not breaking in as much of new staff necessarily as they were last year, I don't think, in the critical positions. So that would answer your question there, right? Of being able to win a little bit more early.
Yeah, and it's always important to kind of understand that context, where Baltimore a couple years ago was Todd Monken's first year and they were trying to figure out their offense. Then you're right, Zach Orr was the defensive coordinator. They went through a ton of turmoil in that secondary. It was one of the worst in the league. They made changes and they turned into one of the best in the league, and we saw that. But that's kind of the adjustments that they had to make on the fly, and it certainly helps them be able to be more consistent across the board over the course of the year. But Mike, let's say that, the Ravens make it to the playoffs again, because we know they're a great regular season team, but they falter again. Let's say that they don't achieve their goal. Let's say it's a wild card or divisional round exit. Lamar Jackson, is crazy to even say this, he's going into year 8 this season. He'll be 30 in a couple years. It feels like yesterday we saw him up at the podium in the 2018 draft, along with Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, etc. What do you do? Do you just run the course with John Harbaugh? Do you make a coaching change? Because a wild card or divisional round exit, it feels like they're doing the same thing over and over again with not a lot of growth.
Yes, I think, no, you're not going to change the quarterback or the coach. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they both have, look, Lamar's an MVP candidate every year. And I think the last couple of years, it's not like he's been horrific in the playoffs. There was a while there where it was like he was solved, almost exposed in the playoffs. And you're like, oh my gosh, can this style of play, produce a championship? I don't think we feel that way as much. I feel like he's grown. The offense has grown. Certainly he could have, taken care of the ball better. I think, I think he was sloppy with the ball in the Buffalo game, in the playoffs, but, I don't see that as a fatal flaw necessarily. I think that he has been better in those big games and in the playoffs the last couple of years. And that's the trend I want to see continue.
Right.
You also have to take into account who you're going against. And I think historically, this happens to teams. If you go way back to the 1970s, the Steelers were so good that these great teams that the Dolphins and the Raiders had, the Raiders were known as a team that couldn't ever win the big one. And they ended up winning one Super Bowl in the 70s with a really great team. John Madden won like 70% of his games. That's because of who they had to go up against in their conference. And I think if you're the Ravens and the Bills right now, we know who that is. You're going against Mahomes. And that is a factor to me that you have to take into account. Now, if Lamar is melting down in the playoffs year after year, that's a different story. I don't think that's been the case the last couple of years. So let's just let's see if they can break through one of these seasons. And it may be a situation where you're lucky to even get to one Super Bowl during his career because of the Chiefs.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson certainly not going anywhere. Right? He's a guy that you're going to ride until the wheels fall off, whenever that may be. And hopefully he's going to have many more years ahead of him. For John Harbaugh, we'll see. But again, if you fire John Harbaugh, you have to be pretty sure that there's going to be another coach you can get out there in Baltimore that can be just as good, if not better, because John Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in this league for sure. Mike, I appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping on. Before I get you out of here, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on. I know it's a busy week for you this week.
Yeah, absolutely. On X, I'm at Sando NFL, Sando NFL. At The Athletic, certainly if you have the app or if you read the New York Times, you can find my work there. I have some post-draft stuff coming out. You mentioned the the free agency breakdown, that might not be a bad thing to look at before the draft. These things are connected, right? How teams set themselves up. Got that on there. So those are a few of the things we got going, and looking forward to the draft Thursday.
Really appreciate Mike for taking some time talking Ravens football with me. He's always great. We've had him on the show a couple times now, and he always gives awesome insight. So be sure to check out all that Mike has going on. Links will be in the description down below. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Coming up tomorrow, it is draft day. We're talking about what the Ravens need to do during the draft, to talk about the final news and notes before the draft begins, and we'll just have a whole fun time here on the show tomorrow. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on draft day on Locked On Ravens.